The movie begins during a routine mission aboard the International Space Station, where a team of astronauts prepares to intercept an unmanned space probe, codenamed Pilgrim, carrying biological samples on its way to Earth after completing its 8-month Mars mission. Within the capsule are soil samples that seemingly contain evidence of alien life. Discovering that it veered off course, engineer Rory Adams is tasked with slowing the probe down so it can be docked safely into their orbit using a remote arm. Despite the jitters of the crew, they carefully help Rory set up for the dangerous spacewalk operation. Within minutes, the Pilgrim shuttle crashes but gets caught by the arm, relieving the crew watching from the window. The following day, UK ISS exobiologist Hugh Derry examines a speck of the soil sample, revealing a dormant cell resembling hairy flagella. Attempting to revive it, he pumps more carbon dioxide inside the biotank, akin to Earth's atmosphere during the Proterozoic era, and adds glucose as a growth medium. Somehow, the cell wriggles, showing signs of life that delight the crew immensely. Sometime later, after the living cell's colossal discovery, the crew set up a live feed for New York's Times Square as they answer questions from schoolchildren belonging to Calvin Coolidge Elementary School. The crew, including ISS Mission Commander Ekaterina Kat Golovkina, CDC Quarantine Officer Dr. Miranda North, Medical Officer Dr. David Jordan, and Japanese ISS Systems Engineer Sho Murakami, introduce themselves, tour the children around the ship, and explain their daily routine. One of the kid representatives proudly names the newly found Martian species Calvin after their school's name. Later, during some downtime, Miranda checks with David about his rising muscle atrophy due to the extended stay confined in the station. David shares the devastating situations he witnessed as a soldier in Syria, feeling grateful that he is in space, far away from the hardships on Earth. At the same time, Hugh confides in Commander Kat about his longing to freely use his legs since he was wheelchair-bound at 10 years old. On day 12 of the mission aboard the ISS, Hugh continues experimenting on the Calvin specimen, discovering the cells have evolved into a single unit that shares electrical neural activity. Miranda deduces that the entity comprises trillions of identical cooperative cells with sensory functions. Suddenly, Calvin grows proto-appendages, reaching out to Hugh's finger with its newly formed arms before it sways around. This discovery fascinates the entire crew. Later, while everyone is taking a break at the lounge, Sho is video chatting with his wife, Kazumi, who is in labor at the hospital. He tries to calm her down while she pushes their baby out under the doctor's orders. Not long after, he introduces his newborn baby, May, to the team. Commander Kat is so pleased that he gifts him a book, Goodnight Moon, hoping he will read it to May sometime. Later, Hugh resumes his work with Calvin, who has learned to latch onto his finger. He soon becomes attached to the strange creature, treating it like a pet. On day 25, the crew responds to a heightened alert inside the lab, where the biotank's clamp has malfunctioned. Rory manages to repair the issue quickly as Hugh owns up to his mistake. He and Miranda are understandably livid over the breach of protocol and insist Hugh must strictly observe contamination protocols since they do not want to risk losing the specimen around the space station. Not long after the incident, Miranda records her findings about Calvin no longer growing and entering hibernation. During a physical therapy session, Hugh shares his fascination with studying Calvin's molecular structure, hoping it will lead to developments in stem cell research and uncurable diseases. Later, he stimulates Calvin's senses by awakening the specimen with a mild shock. However, he cannot make it move. However, on his second attempt, Calvin suddenly grasps his gloved hand tightly, which worries the entire crew watching from outside the lab. He tries to break free, but it does not let him, despite getting enticed to latch onto the electric prod. Though it is apparent Hugh is in danger, Miranda remains defiant, sealing the lab and securing the firewall to prevent the creature from escaping. The helpless exobiologist fails to slip out of the glove and pains over the crushing grip of Calvin. Everyone soon panics when it lets go of Hugh, who is now floating unconscious inside the lab. Suddenly, Calvin reaches for the prod and punctures a hole in the glove to break free. Ignoring protocol, Rory takes action, opening the door to pull him out. However, David sees Calvin grab his leg, forcing him to close the door on Rory as they safely recover Hugh. Realizing the danger, Commander Kat allows the engineer to kill the alien creature, with Sho suggesting burning it. Rory blasts Calvin with the blowtorch, which frees him but lets the specimen loose around the lab. As fear intensifies in the station, Rory nervously exhausts the incinerator, failing to subdue the crawling creature. To everyone's horror, Calvin enters Rory's mouth and devours his internal organs, killing him. The torch then floats towards the sprinklers, triggering the fire suppression system. Calvin then escapes from Rory's lifeless body, seemingly much larger than before, and looks for a way out. The commander and Sho attempt to manually override the system while the CPU is in lockdown mode. Miranda watches as the creature slips inside an open vent after feeling the airflow through it. After recovering Rory's corpse, the crew discovers that their communication system, despite being independent of the sprinklers, has somehow shut down, preventing them from contacting Earth. Sho realizes that the transmitter has failed and would need to be repaired from outside the station. Beset by urgency, Commander Kat volunteers to perform the spacewalk despite the underlying risks. Not long after David has put her in her suit, she sets out to find the transmitter, identifying an overheating issue. Hugh deduces that Calvin has absorbed the coolant for sustenance. Suddenly, the creature latches onto Kat's suit, trying to find a way inside her while squeezing her leg. While Miranda guides her through the harrowing ordeal, David leaves the airlock to burn Calvin. To complicate the situation, the creature destroys Kat's coolant loop, scattering liquid inside her suit. With no other recourse, the commander untethers her harness and jumps toward the airlock while drowning inside her own suit. David hurriedly wears a space suit and meets Kat outside the airlock, asking her to open the valve. However, the commander sacrifices herself so that Calvin will stay outside of the space station. The crew helplessly watches as she drifts away while the intelligent creature leaps and scurries elsewhere. As they grieve the loss of their beloved commander, they reorganize and plan to keep the creature away from the maneuvering thrusters by blasting it. Sho knows it will trigger the temperature sensors if it attempts to climb through one of the nozzles. They miss and see Calvin run toward the outside of the lab. Sho repeats the process of burning out the thrusters until the fuel gauge reaches a critical level, causing the station to face orbital decay and burn up upon reaching Earth's atmosphere. Though they get back to a safer orbit, it allows Calvin to re-enter the station. Hugh deduces that since depriving the creature of air can cause it to lay dormant, he suggests they seal themselves inside the tranquility room and vent the rest of the station. While everyone seals the interior, a visibly weakened Ha sees Calvin but keeps the sighting to himself. Later, David and the others share their sentiments about seeing his colleagues' deaths, comparing the tragedy to the Challenger's explosion. Hugh says Calvin is targeting them because they are its means of survival before slipping into an unconscious state. The team immediately uses the defibrillator to revive him with controlled shocks. As they do, however, Miranda sees movement inside Hugh's pant leg. She opens it to reveal that Calvin has latched onto his leg the entire time, feeding off him. Miranda tries to shock him with a plasma cutter, only to provoke the creature to attack. The surviving astronauts race toward the exit hatches as Calvin chases them. Sho separates himself from David and Miranda to protect them, encasing himself in one of the sleeping pods. Calvin stares menacingly at him and attempts to break through the glass until it retreats. Meanwhile, David and Miranda return to a dying Hugh as he requests to be lifted up one last time before succumbing to his injuries. Miranda sees that her finger is wounded, not knowing that her blood is floating away. She and David find an opportunity to track Calvin since it swallows Hugh's leg tracker. They ultimately use Hugh's corpse to lure it into a trap, sealing it in the room while they vent the oxygen supply. While the creature is slowly suffocating, David sees an approaching Soyuz spacecraft sent by headquarters after receiving a brief distress call from the commander earlier. The pair try to signal the craft with a flash, only to be ignored as it intends to push the station into deep space. Miranda realizes Earth has activated Firewall 3 as a failsafe to protect Earth from the creature, confessing she knew about this protocol before coming aboard the ISS. Sho leaves his pod unbeknownst to the two, believing a rescue ship has arrived. As he grabs a knob to open the hatch, Calvin follows closely behind and decimates the Soyuz crew, who were caught off guard. Afterward, it latches on Sho, forcing him to sacrifice himself by letting go of Miranda's grasp to get sucked into the Soyuz craft to trap Calvin. Miranda then precariously reaches the airlock to close it, only to see the creature return, forcing her and David to flee and lock it from the other side. The pair watches horrified as the Soyuz detaches from the docking bay and crashes into their station, causing them to fly erratically and slowly descend into Earth in 39 minutes. Accepting their fate regarding their non-survival, the pair still worries that the creature may survive re-entry into Earth's atmosphere. David reads the Goodnight Moon book one last time as Miranda reminisces about her father. As they brace the coldness of the interior, they brainstorm a plan to lower Calvin into one of the two lifeboats, both set to a default trajectory. David will trap it inside Boda using an oxygen candle before pressing a button to give him complete manual control to override the flight path and avoid re-entry. At the same time, Miranda will board the other pod for safety. Despite her hesitations, she accepts David's sacrifice for her, trusting his decision for her survival. Not long after, the pair suits up and goes their separate ways to enact their plan. David searches for Calvin as he grabs and consumes the oxygen candle. He hurriedly floats away, leading the creature into his pod while it gets distracted by another oxygen candle. After locking himself with the beast, he leaves a message for headquarters, alerting them that he will launch into space, and Miranda does the same in her pod. While this continues, she records a black box to warn everyone of Calvin's imminent danger to life on Earth, hoping they will not underestimate its capabilities. David then gets attacked by Calvin while he frantically steers the ship. Soon after, one of the pods lands in the South Pacific Ocean, catching the attention of two Vietnamese fishermen, who appear stunned by their discovery. Meanwhile, the other pod, where Miranda is, starts failing and flies wildly into deep space, leaving her fate unknown. At the same time, the fishermen discover a trapped David enveloped almost completely by Calvin. Believing he is in danger, they force open the hatch door, not knowing the astronaut is warning them to stay away. The movie ends as other boats slowly approach the wreckage, not knowing the horror they will face. Thank you for watching. Subscribe for more videos like this to help the channel out. Have a nice day.